Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Cashin Holt stood in his apartment, watching the lights of Astor City flicker across the horizon. His latest architectural masterpiece, the Orion Tower, dominated the skyline, a testament to his resilience and success. The modern space around him bore little resemblance to the warm, traditional mansion he once shared with Area Price. But that was 5 years ago, before the betrayal that transformed him. The buzz of his phone interrupted his thoughts. Another accolade, another award nomination for the Orion. He placed the phone screen down on his desk, next to the framed blueprint of his tower. Success tasted different now, less sweet, more metallic. "Mr. Holt." His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board meeting is in 20 minutes. "Thank you, Claire," he replied. His voice carried the polished edge of authority he'd cultivated since rebuilding his life. As he adjusted his tie, memories of that fateful dinner invaded his mind. 5 years ago, the Holt family estate buzzed with the usual Friday dinner energy. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware scraped against fine china, and conversation flowed as smoothly as the aged wine in their goblets. Cashin sat at his usual place, Area beside him, radiant in a deep blue dress that complemented her golden hair. "The Wellington project is exceeding expectations," Cashin announced, meeting his father's approving gaze across the mahogany table. "We're ahead of schedule and under budget." Albert Holt nodded, pride evident in his expression. "Excellent work, son. The board will be pleased." "Speaking of pleased," Area interjected, her voice carrying that musical quality that had first captured Cashin's heart. "I simply must show you the photos from the charity gala, Lenora. The decorations were divine." She reached for her phone, accidentally knocking it off the table. It landed near Lenora's feet, screen unlocked and glowing. Cashin's mother picked it up, her eyes catching on the message displayed. The color drained from Lenora's face. "Area, dear, what is this?" Area's hand flew to her mouth, tears instantly welling in her eyes. "I didn't want anyone to know. I've been trying to handle it privately." "Mother." Cashin's voice held a note of concern. Lenora's hand shook as she read the message aloud. "Last night was incredible, my love. I can't wait until next time. Your wife never needs to know. Signed, Nadia." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Cashin, who sat frozen, processing the words. "That's not possible," he stated firmly. "I don't know any Nadia." Area's tears flowed freely now. "Please, don't lie. Not here, not in front of your family. I found other messages, other evidence. I couldn't bear to expose you." Albert's face turned to stone. "Cashin, if this is true." "It's not," Cashin insisted, reaching for Area's hand. She pulled away, shoulders shaking with sobs. "I think," Lenora's voice cut through the tension like ice, "we need to discuss this as a family. Area, dear, perhaps you should retire to the guest room." Area fled the dining room, leaving behind a wake of shocked silence. As she ascended the stairs, a small, satisfied smile played at the corners of her mouth. In the dining room, Lenora turned to her son. "How could you? The Holt name has never been associated with such scandal." "Mother, this is ridiculous. I've never been unfaithful to Area. Never." Albert stood, his presence commanding attention. "The evidence suggests otherwise, son. And in this family, reputation is everything. Until this is resolved, it's best you step away from the company." "Father, you can't be serious." "Based on one text message. Based on the word of your wife, whom we've welcomed into this family. Based on your recent distance, the late nights at the office. Based on the fact that the Holt name cannot weather this kind of scandal." Cashin's world crumbled around him, piece by piece. His mother wouldn't meet his eyes. His father's disappointment radiated across the table, and somewhere upstairs, his wife wept crocodile tears while his life burned to ash. Later that night, in a dimly lit bar across town, Damien Frost raised his glass in a mock toast. 2 successful ventures. He smirked, watching Aria sip her champagne. They bought it completely, she purred, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. You should have seen their faces. Poor, noble Cashin, the faithful husband, exposed as a cheat. Damien's fingers traced patterns on her wrist. And the family business. Albert's already pushing him out. Once the divorce is final, the Holts will be so ashamed of him they'll practically hand us everything we want. Brilliant work, my dear. Though I must say that text message was a particularly inspired touch. Aria leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. I learned from the best. Now about that penthouse you promised me. In his modern apartment, Cashin's phone rang, displaying Elena Kim's number. He answered immediately. Cashin. Elena's voice carried concern. I just heard. What the hell happened? I need your help. His words came out tight with suppressed rage. Everything's falling apart, and I don't even understand why. I'm on my way. Don't do anything rash. 30 minutes later, Elena Reyes, one of the city's most formidable lawyers, sat across from him, her legal pad already filled with notes. Her dark eyes studied him with the intensity that had won her every major case she'd taken. Walk me through everything again, she commanded. Every detail matters. As Cashin recounted the evening's events, Elena's frown deepened. This doesn't add up. The timing, the conveniently dropped phone. Cashin, this feels orchestrated. By Aria? Why would she? Money. Status, revenge for something. I don't know yet, Elena replied. But I promise you, we'll figure it out. She reached across the table, gripping his hand. You're not alone in this. Whatever's happening, we'll face it together. Cashin squeezed her hand, grateful for her unwavering support. But beneath his appreciation, something else stirred, a cold, hard determination. If this was truly a betrayal, if Aria had orchestrated the destruction of his life. They'll pay, he said quietly, his voice carrying a new edge that made even Elena pause. Everyone involved in this will pay. Looking at him, Elena saw something shift in her oldest friend. The warm, trusting man who'd once lit up rooms with his smile was gone. In his place stood someone harder, someone dangerous. Cashin. No. Elena. Don't try to talk me down. Not this time. He stood, walking to his window. They wanted to destroy me. Fine, but I'll rise from these ashes. And when I do, they'll learn what true destruction feels like. Elena watched him, recognizing that this moment marked a point of no return. The Cashin she knew would never be the same. And perhaps, she thought, that's exactly what he needed to survive what was coming. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly, a blur of paperwork and accusations. Aria played her role perfectly, the devastated wife, forced to expose her husband's infidelity to protect herself. The whole family rallied around her, their support another knife in Cashin's back. In the end, she walked away with half his assets, a generous monthly allowance, and the sympathy of everyone who mattered in their social circle. Cashin was left with his talent, his determination, and a burning desire for revenge that consumed his every waking moment. 5 years later, standing in his apartment, Cashin allowed himself a small smile. The Orion Tower wasn't just a building. It was a declaration of war. Soon, very soon, Aria and everyone who had betrayed him would learn just how patient and ruthless he could be. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. Adrian. It's time. Show me everything you found. The early morning sun painted Cashin's office in sharp angles as he reviewed the files spread across his desk. Adrian Cole sat opposite him, his weathered face impassive as he delivered his report. Your ex-wife's been busy, Adrian stated, sliding another photograph across the desk. These were taken at the Meridian Hotel last week. She's not as careful as she used to be. The photo showed Aria and Damien emerging from the hotel's private elevator, his hand possessively on her lower back. Cashin's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. And the financial records. Adrian produced a thick folder. Damien's been siphoning money from his investment accounts, multiple offshore transfers, all carefully hidden but traceable if you know where to look. He's getting sloppy, overconfident. Perfect. Cashin leaned back, fingers steepled under his chin. And the other matter. My designs. Adrian's expression darkened. You were right. Damien's been trying to access your firm's servers. He's hired some skilled hackers, but they're leaking traces. Amateur hour compared to what I've seen. A knock at the door interrupted them. Elena entered, her tailored suit and determined expression a stark contrast to Adrian's casual attire. Sorry I'm late, she said, taking a seat beside him. Court ran long. What did I miss? Cashin gestured to the photos. Confirmation of what we suspected. They've been working together from the beginning. Elena examined the evidence, her legal mind already formulating strategies. This is good, but we need more, especially if we want to hit them where it really hurts. Already on it, Adrian interjected. I've got someone inside Damien's firm. The things he's doing with client money. The SEC would be very interested. No, Cashin said firmly. We don't involve the authorities. Not yet. This needs to be more personal. Elena raised an eyebrow. Cashin, be careful. Revenge is one thing, but they destroyed my life, Elena. Turned my family against me. Made me look like a cheater and a liar. His voice carried an edge that made both of his companions sit straighter. They don't deserve mercy. Across town, in Damien Frost's penthouse office, Aria lounged on a leather sofa, watching him work. You seem tense, she observed, running a finger along the rim of her wine glass. Damien barely glanced up from his computer. Your ex-husband's new project. The designs. They're revolutionary. My clients are asking questions I can't answer. Then steal them. Aria shrugged. You've done it before. It's not that simple anymore. His security is tight. And Damien hesitated. Something's different about him. The way he looks at me when we cross paths at events, like he knows something. Aria laughed, the sound brittle. Please. Cashin's a puppy dog, always has been. That's why it was so easy. To destroy him. Damien finally looked up, expression serious. Maybe that was a mistake. He's more successful now than ever. And he's not playing by the old rules. You're being paranoid. Aria stood, moving behind him to massage his shoulders. He's nothing. We won, remember? But later that night, alone in her bathroom, Aria stared at her reflection. Damien's words echoed in her mind. The last time she'd seen Cashin at a charity gala, he'd smiled at her, a cold, knowing smile that sent chills down her spine. Back in his apartment, Cashin reviewed Adrian's latest report. His trap was set. Fake designs leaked through channels he knew Damien monitored. Now, all they had to do was wait. Are you sure about this? Elena asked, watching him from the doorway. Once we start, there's no going back. I'm sure. Cashin turned to face her fully. You've been here since the beginning, Elena. You saw what they did to me, what they took. I did, and I helped you rebuild. But this path you're on. They tried to destroy me, he said, so I'll show them what real destruction looks like. Over the next few weeks, Adrian's surveillance confirmed that Damien had taken the bait, downloading the fake designs. Cashin watched through his office window as his real designs were finalized, knowing the trap was about to spring. Sir, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Frost's firm just announced their new project. It's identical to the designs that were leaked. Thank you, Claire, Cashin responded, his tone betraying no emotion. Please call Ms. Kim and Mr. Cole. Tell them it's time for Phase 2. He turned back to the window, remembering the day Aria had first betrayed him. The pain had nearly broken him back then. But pain, he'd learned, could be transformed into something far more dangerous. Patience, precision, and the unwavering desire to make one's enemies suffer. His phone buzzed. A message from Adrian. Damien's presenting the designs to his board right now. Ready when you are. Cashin typed a single word in response. Begin. Within hours, his real designs would be released to the public. Damien's theft would be exposed, his reputation in tatters. And Aria would learn that the man she betrayed was no longer the trusting fool she'd married. This was just the beginning. By the time he was done, they would lose everything, just as he had. But unlike him, they wouldn't rise from the ashes. He would make sure of that. The news of Damien Frost's design theft spread through the architectural community like wildfire. Cashin sat in his office, watching the chaos unfold on multiple screens, each displaying a different news channel covering the scandal. Frost Industries CEO ACCUSD of Stealing Revolutionary Design. Architectural SCANDAL Rocky Keys. Financial District. Damien Frost Faces. An over stolen project. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. Journalists, industry leaders, even old acquaintances seeking comments. He ignored them all, focusing instead on the email from Adrian that had just arrived. Surveillance footage attached. You'll want to see this. The video showed Damien in his office, face contorted with rage as he threw a crystal decanter against the wall. Aria paced behind him, her usual composure cracking. How could you be so stupid? Her voice was shrill through the audio feed. These designs, you said it was foolproof. Damien whirled on her. Don't you dare blame this on me. This was your idea. Steal from Cashin. He's too weak to fight back. Well, guess what? Your ex-husband isn't as weak as you thought. Cashin allowed himself a small smile as he forwarded the video to Elena. Let them turn on each other. It would make the next phase so much simpler. At the Holt family estate, Albert stared at the morning paper, his coffee growing cold. Lenora hovered nearby, wringing her hands. Damien Frost. Albert muttered, sliding the paper aside. We trusted him, invited him into our home. And all this time. Albert, Lenora's voice trembled. What if we were wrong about Cashin? The question hung heavy in the air. Albert remembered the night they turned their backs on their son, choosing to believe Aria's tears over his protests. I should call him, Lenora continued, to apologize, to explain. No, Albert's voice was firm. Not yet. We need to be sure. But as he looked at his wife's troubled face, he knew they'd made a terrible mistake. Their son, who had never been anything but honest and hardworking, had built an empire from nothing after they'd cast him out. And now, evidence suggested they'd been manipulated by the very people they had chosen to trust. Have you seen his new building? Lenora asked softly. The Orion Tower. It's magnificent. Albert nodded, pride and regret warring in his chest. He did that without us, without the family name or connections. I'm going to call him, Lenora decided, reaching for her phone. She dialed Cashin's number, hand shaking. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried again, then a third time. Finally, a text message appeared on her screen. It's too late now. You broke the bond. Lenora collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. Albert moved to comfort her, but stopped short. What right did they have to feel hurt when they had been the ones to inflict the deepest wound? In his private investigator's office, Adrian sifted through new intelligence reports. His network of informants had been working overtime. A knock on his door revealed Cashin, impeccably dressed as always. Tell me you have something, Cashin demanded, without preamble. Adrian gestured to the files spread across his desk. Damien's getting sloppy. He's making deals with some dangerous people, trying to recover from the design theft scandal. Dangerous how? The kind of people who don't take kindly to being crossed, Adrian answered, pulling out a particular file. And he's crossing them, using their investments to cover his losses, making promises he can't keep. Cashin examined the documents, his expression darkening. Can you get proof? Something concrete. Already working on it. But Cashin. Adrian leaned forward. These people, they play for keeps. Good. Cashin's voice was ice. So do I. At a high-end restaurant across town, Aria attempted to salvage what remained of her social standing. She'd arranged lunch with Beatrice Caldwell, one of the city's most influential socialites. Darling, Beatrice prodded, sipping her wine. You must tell me, did you have any idea about Damien's indiscretions? Aria forced a trembling smile. Beatrice, I'm as shocked as everyone else. To think he would betray Cashin like that. Cashin. Beatrice's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Interesting that you mentioned your ex-husband first. I only meant. Of course, dear. Beatrice's smile turned predatory. Though I must say there are rumors circulating about text messages and convenient divorces. After Beatrice left, Aria's composure cracked. She grabbed her phone, dialing Damien's number for the 10th time. Voicemail. Her messages grew increasingly desperate. Pick up your phone. Everything's falling apart. What are we going to do? In his office at Holt Architects, Cashin received an unexpected visitor. Damien Frost stood there, his polished veneer stripped away by rage. He lunged forward, but Adrian's grip stopped him cold. You did this, Damien snarled. You set me up. Cashin remained seated, radiating control. Set you up. Your own greed did this. Your arrogance. Your theft. I'll destroy you, Damien spat. Like you destroyed my marriage. Cashin's voice cut like steel. Tell me, how did it feel helping Aria create those fake messages, watching my family turn against me? Damien's face paled. How did you? I know everything, Cashin said, rising slowly. Your fraud, your theft, your part in destroying my life. And this, he gestured at Damien's crumbling world. This is just the beginning. You can't prove anything. I already have. Cashin's smile was terrifying in its calmness. You're finished, Damien. Your company, your reputation, your wealth. It's all going to disappear, piece by piece, day by day. Security escorted Damien out. Afterward, Alin approached Cashin. That was brutal. That was justice, he replied, returning to his desk. He helped destroy my life. Now he gets to watch as I destroy his. And Aria. Her time's coming. His eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. Beatrice is already planting the seeds. The next morning, headlines screamed about irregularities in Frost Investments accounts. Anonymous sources hinted at fraud, embezzlement, and worse. Damien's carefully constructed world began its final descent into chaos. Inside Frost Investments' executive suite, Damien stared at his computer screen as another investor withdrawal notification appeared. His fingers gripped the mahogany desk, knuckles white with tension. $3 billion in assets, gone in a week. Mr. Frost, his assistant's voice trembled through the intercom. The board members are waiting in the conference room. Tell them I'm busy. Damien snapped. They said it's non-negotiable, sir. They'd brought the company lawyers. The board meeting was a firing squad in expensive suits, 12 pairs of eyes fixed on Damien with barely concealed disgust as he tried to explain away the design theft allegations. This is clearly a misunderstanding, Damien insisted, his usual charm falling flat. Misunderstanding. Board member Harrison interrupted, sliding a tablet across the table. The evidence is irrefutable. Timestamps, access logs, even your own presentation metadata. Our stock has dropped 40%. Another board member added. Major clients are withdrawing their investments. The SEC is asking questions. I can fix this. You're suspended, pending investigation, they announced. Security will escort you out. Across town, Aria faced her own brand of destruction. Her regular table at Leblink, once the center of social activity, sat isolated like a quarantine zone. Former friends averted their eyes. Her phone buzzed with another message from her real estate agent. Another property she'd have to liquidate. Another step down. Beatrice Caldwell approached her, smile sharp as a blade. "Oh, Aria, darling. You look different. This business with Damien must be so stressful." "A simple misunderstanding. Aria manage." "Is it?" Beatrice leaned closer. "People are talking, dear, about the divorce, about those text messages. Some even suggest your claims about Cashin might have been fabricated." When Beatrice left, Aria barely made it to the bathroom before she was sick. Her phone buzzed. Damien again. She ignored it. He'd been increasingly unstable since the scandal broke, alternating between rage and desperation. Back at Holt Architects, Cashin reviewed Adrian's surveillance report. Photos showed Damien leaving various banks, panic evident in every move. Financial records detailed the steady drain on his accounts. "He's hemorrhaging money," Adrian noted. "Your ex-wife isn't doing much better. She's trying to liquidate assets, but no one's buying. And the offshore accounts. Being drained as we speak. Untraceable, just as you requested." Elena entered, tablet in hand. "Damien's lawyers want to talk about a settlement." "Deny it," Cashin said flatly. Elena sighed. "You sure? He's desperate enough to do anything." "That's exactly what I'm counting on," he replied, unflinching. "They took everything from me. They deserve nothing less." Night fell on Astor City as Cashin stood by his window, the Orion Tower gleaming in the distance. It was more than a building. It was his declaration. He remembered the moment Aria's facade had shattered his life. The pain then had almost been unbearable. But that pain had forged him into this, a man who understood the power of precise, patient revenge. He raised a glass to the skyline. "You tried to bury me," he whispered. "Now watch how high I've risen." Inside Frost Investments, Damien's legal team sat in Elena's conference room. Their expensive suits couldn't hide their desperation. 3 hours into negotiations, and she had systematically destroyed each of their arguments. "Your client's lawsuit is baseless," Elena stated, sliding a thick folder across the table. "The design theft is documented, the financial irregularities are under investigation, and now you claim defamation." "Ms. Kim," Damien's lead attorney began, "our client maintains." "Your client maintains nothing," she snapped, pushing the folder toward them. "This contains evidence of his involvement in fabricating text messages during Mr. Holt's divorce. Shall we discuss criminal conspiracy?" The lawyers exchanged glances, sweat visible on their brows. "We'll need to consult with our client," they mumbled, gathering their papers. After they left, Elena called Cashin. "They're running scared." "Good. And Aria's attempts." "She can't find a lawyer willing to take her case, not after what Adrian uncovered about her past cons." In her penthouse, Aria watched movers pack her designer furniture. Another asset liquidation, another step down. Her phone rang. Beatrice again. "Darling." Beatrice's voice dripped poison. "The Miami Herald. Well, in your case, let's say more than one source. Seems quite interested in your background. Imagine, a society woman who cried wolf about her husband's infidelity, exposed as a career con artist. You might want to comment." "What do you want?" Aria croaked. "What? I'm just the messenger. Though watching your fall has been entertaining. Did you really think you'd get away with destroying Cashin Holt?" At Holt Architects, Cashin's security system pinged, multiple unauthorized entries at different points in the building. "Sir," his head of security called, "we have intruders." "I know." Cashin smiled. "Implement Protocol Orion." Damien's hired men found themselves surrounded, outmatched, and quickly subdued. Damien, watching from a nearby vantage point, realized too late he'd been played. His phone buzzed with a message from Cashin. "Amateur move. Frost. Now shall we discuss consequences?" The police arrived, arresting Damien's men. A conveniently timed traffic accident allowed Damien to flee from the scene. Exactly as Cashin had planned, Damien ran through the city streets, polished exterior crumbling with each desperate step. Adrian's team tracked his movements, feeding information to Cashin. "He's heading east," Adrian reported. "Getting sloppy." "Good," Cashin replied. "Let him run. Fear makes people careless." Aria watched the news coverage, hands shaking as she dialed Damien. "The police are looking for you," she hissed when he answered. "What were you thinking?" "I was thinking about revenge," Damien's voice cracked. "He's destroyed everything. And now you've given him exactly what he wanted. Proof you're a criminal, too." She ended the call, turning to find Adrian in her doorway. "How long?" she asked, resigned. "Long enough." Adrian's expression remained neutral. "Mr. Holt sends his regards. Tell him." She paused. "Tell him he won." Meanwhile, Cashin surveyed the aftermath from his office. His phone rang. Elena again. "You knew," she said. "You knew Damien would try something like this." "Of course," Cashin replied. "People like Damien can't handle losing control." As darkness fell, Damien found himself cornered. Police sirens wailed closer, headlines screaming his name. His phone displayed one final text from Cashin. "How does it feel, Frost, to lose everything?" Police lights flooded the decrepit building. In his office, Cashin watched the arrest on live news. His assistant entered. "The board of Frost Investments is requesting a meeting. They're interested in discussing a potential acquisition." "Schedule it for next week," Cashin said calmly. "Let them sweat." He turned to the city lights, remembering the betrayal that had nearly destroyed him. Damien, in handcuffs. Aria's reputation in tatters. His parents desperately trying to atone. Each piece had fallen into place perfectly. "Was it worth it?" Elena asked quietly. Cashin looked at the one true friend who had stood by him. "Ask me again when it's finished." That night, he allowed himself to savor this victory, the proof that betrayal came with consequences. He raised his glass to his reflection, to the man he'd become, to the power he'd gained, to the enemies he'd destroyed. The game wasn't quite over, but the end was in sight. And Cashin Holt never left things unfinished. News headlines dominated screens across Astor City. Frost, Arrested. Former finance mogul faces multiple charges. ARAPRIC exposed. The con artist who fooled society. Holt Industries shake up. Famile. It empire at Curiumbelis. In a private rehabilitation facility outside the city, Aria sat in group therapy. Her designer clothes replaced by simple attire, her perfect makeup gone. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I destroyed a good man," she admitted, voice hollow. "I manipulated everyone around him, his family, his friends, society itself, all because I wanted more. Always more." The therapist leaned forward. "And now?" "Now I have nothing," Aria whispered. "The irony is, I had everything with Cashin. Real love, stability, respect. I traded it for nothing." Across town, Damien Frost sat in his prison cell, awaiting trial. His lawyer visited, bringing more bad news. "They're denying bail," the lawyer explained. "The evidence is overwhelming. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted assault, corporate theft. You're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum." Damien slammed his fist against the table. "Get me a deal." "Mr. Frost, no one's offering deals. Your former board members are testifying against you. Your offshore accounts have been frozen. Mr. Holt's legal team has built an airtight case." In his office at Holt Architects, Cashin reviewed the newest designs for his museum project, another structure that would redefine the skyline. Elena walked in, carrying reports. "The foundation paperwork is ready. The Orion Initiative, supporting young architects from disadvantaged backgrounds, could change a lot of lives." Cashin studied the documents, Make sure the board includes no Holt family members. They can donate, but they'll have no control. Speaking of family, Elena said softly, your mother called again. His expression remained impassive. The same answer stands. She's dying, Cashin, Elena pressed. A brief pause. Then she dies knowing the consequences of her choices. Adrian arrived with his daily update. Damien's prison contacts say he's breaking down. He sits in his cell talking about how he had it all. And Aria, she seems to be making progress in rehab, surprisingly sincere. It doesn't matter, Cashin replied. Sincere remorse doesn't erase genuine betrayal. Later that evening, Cashin toured his museum construction site. Workers nodded respectfully as he passed. His phone buzzed. A message from Adrian. Damien's plea accepted. 20 years confirmed. Area completing rehab. Holt Industries stock down 40% since restructuring. Your mother's condition worsening. Cashin stared at the update. Make sure the foundation announcement goes out as planned tomorrow. That's everything. In the rehab center's garden, Aria wrote in her journal. Day 45. The masks are gone. The lies exposed. Cashin gave me everything, and I repaid him with betrayal. Damien and I thought we were so clever. Now he's in prison, and I'm here, learning how to be human again. The worst part, Cashin never lost himself. He turned our betrayal into strength. We tried to destroy him, but he rose higher. I see his buildings touching the sky, and remember when I had the love of the man who designed them. At the prison, Damien stared at the ceiling in his cell. 20 years, 2 decades to remember how they failed to break one man and destroyed themselves instead. His cellmate snorted. You tried to take down Holt. Damien laughed hollowly. We tried to break him, but we broke ourselves against him. In the mansion, Lenora lay in her bedroom, machines beeping softly. Albert held her hand as the doctor spoke in hushed tones. Days, the doctor said quietly. Maybe less. Albert nodded, eyes on his wife's drawn face. She whispered, Cashin, my boy. I'm sorry. Albert dialed Cashin's number again, voice cracking. Your mother. Please. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. Give us a chance, though. But he couldn't finish. What right did they have to ask anything now? Cashin's phone displayed the message. Lenora Holt passed at 11:42 p.m. Your father requests. He deleted it. The man they betrayed might have run to his mother's side, offering forgiveness. But that man was gone. They had killed him with their lies, their betrayal, their easy willingness to believe the worst. In his place stood someone stronger, someone willing to watch his enemies break themselves against his resolve. 1 year later, the Orion Museum opened to international acclaim, architectural magazines hailing it as a masterpiece, a testament to rebirth and transformation. The building rose from the city center like a declaration. Beautiful, powerful, uncompromising. Cashin stood at the opening ceremony, cameras flashing. Beside him, Talia Wu, the museum's curator, spoke about the building's significance. It's more than architecture, she said, her voice carrying passion. It's a statement about resilience, about rising stronger from adversity. Cashin watched her, noting how keenly she understood the museum's true meaning. They had worked closely for months, her intelligence and directness chipping away at his carefully constructed walls. The Orion Initiative's first class of young architects graduated that same week. 20 talented individuals who might have been lost to circumstance. Now they were ready to reshape the world. Elena found him in his office after the ceremony. Talia is good for you, she remarked simply. She understands strength, Cashin replied. She never asks me to be less than what I am. And what are you, Cashin? He considered the question. Someone who learned that power isn't about forgiveness. It's about rising so high that those who betrayed you must live in your shadow. In prison, Damien watched news reports about the museum's success. He scribbled a journal entry. We tried to bury him in lies. Instead, we gave him the blueprint for our own destruction. The Cashin we knew would never have done this. But the Cashin we created is immortal now. At a small advocacy center, Aria counseled others who struggled with manipulation and self-destruction. She saw a news article featuring Cashin and Talia at a charity event. "You knew him?" a colleague asked. "I knew a different version of him," Aria replied, "before betrayal turned him to steel." The whole family business was sold off piece by piece. Albert lived alone, surrounded by photos of happier times. He slipped into the Orion Museum's opening from a distance, watching his son command the world that once rejected him. The press photos showed Cashin and Talia at the center, power radiating from their matching expressions of controlled strength. The article mentioned their engagement, Talia's rise from humble circumstances to a respected voice in the art world. "They suit each other," Albert murmured to the empty rooms. "She matches who he became." Late that night, Cashin and Talia stood in his penthouse, gazing over Aster City. "The initiative's board wants to expand," she said. "Double the scholarships next year." "Approved," he nodded. "Talent shouldn't be wasted. Like yours almost was," Talia noted gently. He turned to her. "They tried to waste me. Instead, they created this. Do you ever regret not forgiving them? Forgiveness is weakness disguised as virtue." He breathed out slowly. "I became strong by accepting that some bridges should stay burned." Talia understood. She never asked him to be gentler, only stronger. Their partnership worked because they had both risen from betrayal. The next morning, Adrian reported Damien's life in prison. "He's up for parole soon." "Deny it," Cashin said. "Whatever it takes." Across the city, Aria quietly helped others rebuild their lives. Whenever she caught sight of Cashin's accomplishments in the news, she felt the pang of what she'd lost. He had transcended them all. The Orion Museum shone as a symbol of transformation, not forgiveness, but the power of turning betrayal into triumph. 10 years later, the Orion Museum celebrated its anniversary with a grand gala. The building had become an icon, a beacon of transformation. Cashin, now in his late 40s, stood at the center of the crowd, his presence even more commanding. Time had only sharpened his authority. Talia Wu orchestrated the event, now one of the art world's most influential figures. Their partnership was as formidable as any of Cashin's architectural feats. The Orion Initiative thrived in multiple cities, each year lifting promising architects from adversity and building Cashin's influence throughout the industry. Elena Kim, running a powerful law firm, arrived with Adrian Cole, now heading a global security enterprise. Loyalty had been rewarded. "Damien's up for parole again," Adrian said quietly. "It won't happen," Elena confirmed. His prison record sealed that fate. In his maximum security cell, Damien looked years older than he was, his once handsome face gone gaunt. He gazed at a clipping of Cashin's latest triumph, another architectural wonder rising overseas. "He owns the skyline now," he muttered to the blank walls. "Every city I can't see, he's there." Meanwhile, Aria worked in her modest office, counseling others who fell prey to their own worst impulses. She wore simple clothes, a face lined with the wisdom of regret. On her wall hung a framed article featuring Cashin and Talia at the initiative's annual gala. Sometimes she used their story, without revealing her personal connection, to show how betrayal could transform both the betrayed and the betrayer. The whole family name survived only through Cashin's success. Relatives who had once chosen Aria's lies scurried to the margins of society. Some attempted reconciliation over the years, sending letters that Cashin left unopened, making calls that went unanswered. Every new building Cashin erected stood as a testament to his unstoppable ascent. Talia planned each project's unveiling with artistic flair. The initiative brought fresh talent into the fold. Adrian's security firm guarded the empire Cashin had built. Elena's legal team ensured no one dared to cross him again. "Do you never think of forgiving them?" Elena asked Cashin one evening, watching the city glow beneath the penthouse windows. He stared at the skyline. "They destroyed the man I was. Forgiveness won't bring him back. Talia stepped in, placing a hand on Cashin's shoulder. And you rose higher, she said softly. That's your true victory. They had all learned the price of betrayal. Arya struggled with quiet remorse. Damien rotted in prison. Albert faded away in obscurity. Cashin soared higher each year, the Orion Initiative lighting the path for others. His empire outlasted the scandal, forging a new legacy that transcended the Holt name. In the end, they all understood. The man they tried to destroy hadn't merely survived. He had transcended. Buildings bearing his signature reshaped horizons worldwide. The Orion Museum stood as a monument, not to forgiveness, but to the raw power of rising from the ashes of betrayal. This was Cashin Holt's true legacy, not just structures that touched the sky, but proof that betrayal, properly harnessed, could become the foundation of an unbreakable empire.